He grew up among Hollywood royalty as the son of late and legendary comic, actor-director Jerry Lewis. He worked with his dad on every muscular dystrophy telethon for nearly 40 years, and beginning in the year 2000, he followed a charitable vocation of his own, bringing the gift of mobility to the disabled as president of the American Wheelchair Mission. He's here tonight to talk about his charity work and a brand new book he's written about his dad. It's called Jerry Lewis on Being a Person. Please welcome back to the program my pal Chris Lewis. Chris,
thank you, Raymond.
Thank you for coming. I saw this in its early iteration, and I loved this book for so many reasons. My question is, tell us about, this is kind of the framework you're using here is based on a book that your father wrote at one point, a very small book by his own admission, called On Being a Person. How did that book come to be, and why did you use that as the rubric for this work?
Well, during the filming of his film, The Nutty Professor, in 1962, he kind of felt there was some tension between the crew, like they weren't getting along real well in the first week. So he went home that night and he wrote on his typewriter 45 different things that you should do to be a better person, like love God, pray, buy a dog, give candy to children, things like that.
Tell the truth.
Just, stuff. Say good morning to anybody. And what I did is I realized that I was following many of the things I learned in his book through my life. And so then I started investigating, well, why were those things important to him? And I believe I have created a framework to be able to explain how he became such an incredibly successful entertainer, comedian, writer-director, and one of the most impactful humanitarians in history.
Yet look, there have been volumes written about your father, thousands of articles and interviews. I mean, I read a lot of them before the interviews we did. Yet you say here that he's misunderstood. What about him is misunderstood?
Well, people took him as being either overconfident or an egomaniac, but he was a perfectionist. That's all he wanted. He wanted everybody to put in as much as he did into being the best person he could possibly be for everyone.
But I'm going to jump ahead because there's a line in the book that you found, I guess, written out, and I don't know if this was in a diary or something that was just top of mind that he felt he had to get out. But I'm going to put it on the screen. He says, "The pain of perfection is a constant reminder that what we do is more than just a whim or a normal gesture. What we do is meant to represent so much that we have to be imprisoned by our own government and pay attention to the rules and regulations set down by that government. A government that functions from within and one that we are not able to confer with or reason with or doubt or deny. For us to lose the pain, we would have to give up our very existence and hurry back to the masses and be one of the many. One of those timid souls that really don't care or believe that ecstasy is even attainable. How sad that would be, and what pain of sadness. And that pain of sadness is probably far greater than the pain of perfection." Why does that capture who he is, and where did you find that?
I actually found that in many of the documents that he gave to me. He would write these things out just for himself. It wasn't meant to go to anybody. It was just for himself, because he was feeling the pain of perfection. In the late 60s when he wrote this, it was a very frustrating time in the movie business, and he was not able to be as creative as he wanted to be. He didn't have the latitude he had before, and it was a very frustrating time for him.
I mean, we have to say, your father was a remarkable artist in so many ways, an innovator. I mean, I remember reading here, he talks about having Cinderfella, one of his famous films, that was already in the can. Paramount wanted a summer release from Jerry, and he didn't have it, but he was booked at the Fontainebleau at that time in Miami, performing. What happened?
In the 3 weeks that he was at the Fontainebleau, he shot The Bellboy. That was his first film as a director. He spent 2 months writing the script. He conferred with his good friend Stan Laurel to help him with the outline of his first script. He then brought the film crew from Paramount, went to the Fontainebleau, shot the film in 27 days. I remember being on the set. It was bedlam, but it was so much fun. And he performed every night in the show.
Well, you had a shot list here that you have actually a photograph of. I was stunned. 20 setups today, 11 setups. Who does that? 20 setups. A setup is an entirely different lighting scheme, a scene. 20 a day? How did he pull this off?
He's a crazy person.
That helped, right? Tell me about the influence of Stan Laurel. You mentioned him a moment ago. You even refer to him as Uncle Stan in here.
Yes, he became a dear friend of my dad's in the late 1950s and was there to guide him along in his creative process. And I remember him as a wonderful man who we knew as Uncle Stan.
34 successful films in a row for Paramount, which I think is a record.
I think so.
I mean, that's an incredible, to have hit after hit like that, really, from the 50s into the 60s is simply remarkable. And he was churning out multiple films a year, many of his own design. Does it irritate you that we don't hear more about the legacy of Jerry Lewis as a comic innovator, the man who created Video Assist and these brilliant sight gags?
Yeah, it's a little frustrating, but there are constantly new generations that are discovering his work. We've worked closely with Paramount for years on getting the films out there, and they're on almost all the digital platforms now. And Paramount's come around in quite a few different ways in the last few years, and they're much more available now than they were digitally.
Now, this book, we should tell people what this is. Yes, it is kind of Jerry's philosophy on, quote, being a person, but it's also very personal, warm, and I would say newsy remembrances of your dad. You really had a front row seat, not only through your childhood, but you toured with him. You were his road manager, his stage manager, which I'll get to in a minute. But give me a sense, what struck me most as I reread the book, there's a chapter on prayer. There's a chapter on the love of God. Tell me about how your mother's faith, Patty's faith, shaped not only your whole family, but your father, who was Jewish, his faith.
Very much so. My mom's faith was his guiding light because she was his rock. No matter where he went, in what direction, she was the rock he always came back to. And my mom said he put the first crucifix up in our house before I was born. She said, I never hung one because I thought maybe he wouldn't like it. She says, he put one up for me. And so his prayer was very important to him. He talks about it in many documents that I have, and I remember him throughout my life talking about how important it was to pray.
We have images here of Dean Martin and your dad. Obviously, the partnership that defined both of their careers in many ways, certainly started it. Give me a sense of, in the book, you suggest that Dean was the man Jerry always wanted to be. Why?
Because Dean had so much stage presence and was so suave and never nervous.
Laid back. I mean, he almost was careless at times. I mean,
completely. That's the way it appeared. But my dad would be in the dressing room an hour and a half before performance with butterflies in his stomach, just nervous because he's got to go on stage. Dean would come down from the suite, check his hair in a mirror, and walk on stage. He didn't need to worry about it. So my dad was in awe of that.
But that yin and yang is what made the act. I mean, if you watch it, when you watch them at the Copacabana, that black and white footage, or you watch one of the movies, it's the coolness of Dean offset by the manic madness of Jerry that makes it all crackle. I mean, it makes it work.
Absolutely.
But it is interesting, and I want to get back to that relationship in a minute, but I asked your dad, as you remember, why he undertook helming the MDA telethon. And we should tell people, you know this more than anybody, he not only gave 60 years of his life to this cause, it was his everyday obsession. He was writing letters, he was doing personal appearances, he was raising money long before the telethon actually started, those crazed 3 days of production. Here's what the exchange I had with Jerry Lewis. Watch this. Muscular Dystrophy Association. You and Dean did really one of the first telethons at Carnegie Hall.
Right.
Live in New York. And then years later, you take this on, this incredible broadcast. 45 years, you raised $2.6 billion.
61 years.
Toto.
$2,500,000.
Why did you do it for so long, Jerry?
Because I kept getting the money.
What's the full story here, Chris? He met a family very early on.
He met a family in 1949. I was able to trace it back through my mom's diaries and his performance record diaries of where he was when at the Copacabana, May 8th of 1949, when his cousin, Louis Katz, was involved in the 24th annual fundraiser for the Jewish Sanitarium Hospital for Children with Chronic Diseases. And my dad went to meet him at the Waldorf that day before performances and met this family who had lost 2 children to muscular dystrophy and were waiting for the third to die.
And that was the inspiration for this lifelong support of MDA.
My mom told me that he met a family and they touched him so deeply that he came home in tears and said, "We have to help them." And that's what launched it.
The amazing, and we'll never see. I mean, he said it during when I interviewed him. You were there. No one will ever top his record. And the what happened there was not only did you have a performer who was so moved by the cause, but he was able to bring out the biggest stars in music, comedy, Hollywood, every discipline, to come and do this beautiful love-a-thon for the whole country. There's no one who could summon and do that today. There just isn't that magnitude of star.
No. And there were 213 television stations carrying the telethon. That's why he called it the Love Network.
Amazing.
Because we were touching so many people in so many places.
You were your dad's road manager, lighting manager, prop manager from 87 to 89. When he was performing at Bally's with his friend Sammy Davis Jr.,
Yes.
I was privileged to have been there one of those nights, and they were incredible. I mean, they were both incredible. Tell me how that performance and that time that they were at Bally's actually was the rekindling of the relationship between your dad and Dean Martin, which is something I'd never heard before.
Yes, they performed 12 times at Bally's between that approximately 2-year period of time. And the stage manager told me, he said, "Yeah, that's the mirror that Dean checks his hair in when he comes downstairs from the suite before he walks on stage." And so I was on the stage with my dad one night checking the props on the piano, and I pointed it out to him. I said, "That's the mirror Dean checks his hair in." And he comes in like a week after we leave. If you wrote a note on it with a Sharpie, he'd see it. And he goes, "That's a good idea." And so he wrote a note on it that says, "Hi, Paul," which is what he always called Dean, "love JL." And when he came back at the next engagement, there was no answer. And so he wrote underneath it, "Ditto, love JL." And the next time it said, "The name's Dino, not Ditto, schmuck. Love, partner." So that's how the rekindling started. And every time they would alternate performing at Bally's, they would write a note to each other on the mirrors, and there ended up being like 8 or 9 mirrors in that little room.
Do you have the mirrors?
I don't, but but the stage manager told me that before he left Bally's, before they changed the stage, he took them. So I'm hoping, his name was Pat. I don't remember his last name, but I'm hoping Pat still
You got to
has
get
them.
those
They gotta
mirrors.
find them,
Those are some precious mirrors.
Yeah.
I'm going to share this with the audience. When I asked Jerry Lewis what his legacy would be, this is what he told me. Watch. What is the legacy of Jerry Lewis?
The legacy?
The legacy of Jerry Lewis.
My son. That's the greatest legacy that I've left this world. That son.
Chris Lewis, how will you continue to extend and honor the legacy of your dad, Joseph Levitch?
Well, it's quite an honor, and I'm enjoying doing it by what we're doing with the book, sharing the true stories about my dad and his love of humanity and his love of God and how prayer was such an important part of his life. And we're doing those things in a number of ways, and there's some projects we're working on, documentaries and things like that you're going to be seeing a lot more.
Good. We need to see more of Jerry. We need his laughter and his love. And he so touched my life and our viewers in an incredible way. And it was such a gift to know him. And I thank you for bringing us together and making that happen. It was one of my favorite interviews, I have to tell you. And that's with popes and presidents, and it's right up there.
That's great.
So, God bless you. Thank you. Chris Lewis, thank you for being here. Jerry Lewis, On Being a Person by his son Chris Lewis is available at bookstores everywhere and online, but go to jerrylewis2024.com. jerrylewis2024.com. You can order the book directly there. And for more information on the great work Chris does at the American Wheelchair Mission, visit amwheelchair.org. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Ren.